And Kelsey and Alex, you are on.
Alex, do you want to give like a quick rundown and I can insert anything you don't you
Yeah,
missed?
that sounds great. That sounds
Okay.
great. We have some good guiding questions. I'll talk about our wins, challenges, and lessons learned. Um, there's a whole bunch of new members who joined UNSG sort of after the pandemic started. And so we were kind of, a lot of us were new to the group and we didn't have like a lot of transition over of what the group is doing before, what we were doing after. Basically, our goals were to look at what would typically happen on a Wednesday. So this Ujima staff will invite someone to give a presentation on their work relating to any of the 14 Ujima needs. So 1 month, the theme was community-owned energy. And Ujima brought in like solar developers, Sero, who wants to do composting and building energy from composting, and people who want to build out microgrids for communities. So what UNESCO would do is we would take those notes from the Wednesday meetings and look at the recordings, and we'd be like, okay, this is what we learned. This is what other people in Boston or in America are doing. How can Ujima kind of plug in? And so we're trying to figure out what happens after we take those notes. And so we suggested that there needs to be like a needs assembly during the 1 week of events during Valentine's Day this year. And so I don't really know, we don't have a solid plan yet, but we're trying to figure out, like, now that we have all this information about other practitioners doing and meeting these Ujima needs, what should the body do with this information? And I think that's where we're moving on next. And Kelsey, if you could plug in the things that I missed.
Yeah, I think you covered most of it. Just for those who don't know, and Alex started explaining this, essentially what our function has been, at least as I think our group understands it, is to take these co-learnings and really like synthesize them into a really digestible, like, here's 4 weeks worth of information and it is on 1 page, or it is like visually appealing in a way that anybody could come in, read that 1 page, and then, you know, not necessarily have like a fully formed opinion on the topic, but at least have a bit more of an understanding than they did before. In relation to challenges, I think, you know, at one point we had a bit of a challenge of how do we onboard new members, but we resolved that by essentially, if somebody new joins our team during the week, one of us will volunteer to check in with them 1-to-1 between the meeting that they were at and our upcoming meeting on the next Wednesday. And I think the only other challenge that we've faced that is being worked on, and Alex, you already brought this up, is that piece. There was a moment where we were like, where are we going? We're putting all of these summaries together, but like, what does this even mean? And I know for me, and I think Alex, you might agree, the last 3 months, maybe 4 months at this point, there's just kind of like Neo was saying, there's a focus and direction, with that direction being hopefully informing community members of how Ujima can move through the space and support these different economic interventions for equity. Yeah. I think that covers what we're doing.
Yeah, I don't have much to add.
Cool.
Although all my 1-pagers are now 2 pages because I do not know how to edit.
Yeah, we in theory are doing 1-pagers, but really a lot of the topics are, they go over a page because they're complicated.
Yeah.
So I heard you discuss a challenge and a resolution, which was cool. So the challenge was onboarding new team members, and you had a resolution. So Jenny just put in the chat, I would love to get more in depth about onboarding. I'm just curious, did you have any other lessons? And did you have any questions for other members here, just with regards to team operations, so to speak, or any type of insight you think would be useful from other members?
Alex, I don't mind taking that one. Jenny, in response to your question, it's actually kind of really similar to what Alex and I just did. I know Alex has onboarded one person and I've onboarded one person. Essentially, we had someone come to our meeting who knew nothing about UNESCO, and I just set up a phone call with them in my free time to be like, this is what we're doing, and this is what like these phrases meant when we were in the meeting and saying these things. And then from there, I re-invited that person to come back and engage with us. Unfortunately, the person who I onboarded didn't necessarily, they did not come back. But I think it was more just because they didn't necessarily have the time to commit and less about onboarding, but honestly, I'm not sure why. And then I know for me, one thing that I would love to hear from other groups is how y'all are communicating outside of the Wednesday time. Because I know our team is a little guilty about being a bit delayed in answering Sierra's email about who is going to share out about our work. And it just made me think that maybe the UNESCO team should start like a group chat or a Slack or something. But Alex, do you want to take the topics or do you want me to give a stab at it?
I'll take the topics. I want to also say, like, with the onboarding, member teams are, it is extra work and it's volunteer work. I think because people here, they want to see Ujima thrive. So it's, at least for me starting out, like it's helpful to get like some one-on-one communication to figure out how to plug in into this space. I'll share a file into this chat, but because we're recording, I think there have been like 6 topics or 8 topics done from the Ujima needs, community-owned energy, affordable childcare, community-owned internet, and I'm forgetting the others. So I will make sure to track down that file of the rest of the notes. But Dom, I know you've been here, you've been coming since before I was, so you might remember some of these Wednesday meetings. Community land trusts is one. I'll link it in real quick.
Yeah, and John, we're essentially taking the notes of our co-learns and just bringing them in to like a one summary doc. And so some of those we're still working on. Like I know for me, I'm still working on the community land trusts, but I was also in the group that summarized what we learned about like creative placemaking. So for members who are consistently attending the co-learns, these 1 pages might be a bit of a refresher more than a like, here's everything you need to know. But for those who haven't been able to attend on Wednesdays, it's a really great primer to be like, here's what the community identified needs were before, and here's what we learned about them over the last like X meetings, just to add another layer of context.
Cool, thank you. And then I just want to point out, I wanted to say really quickly, really appreciate, so Alex mentioned that the needs assembly idea came from the team. So just really wanted to kind of highlight that and emphasize that. So just really appreciate that. I think that that's really cool. So for us, that is the type of co-creation that we're after with the member teams. And so we were really excited to get that suggestion from the team, and to say, yeah, let's go with it, and and so as I said earlier, we're now in the process of figuring out what that looks like. And we do hope to kind of tap UNESCO's insight on that as well. And then just wanted to lift up, and I see James, you want, or sorry, John, you unmuted yourself, but Kelsey asked this question about communicating outside of Wednesday. So on that note, I'll open it up. Thank you so much, Kelsey and Alex. And hopefully at least one person can respond to that question about communicating outside of Wednesdays. And I see, John, you have unmuted yourself.
Well, I wanted to follow up before moving. I mean, I think that's an important topic too, but just as a follow-up, so you are basically helping Ujima writ large to think about in a kind of quick and easy way some of the sectors, the business sectors that are clearly of interest. You know, I know the first sort of Ujima, before I started coming to these, I went to that meeting at Suffolk Law School, and one of the exercises we did was, you know, what are the businesses we want in our neighborhood, and what are some of the ones we'd like to get rid of? And so this is sort of focused on what are some of the businesses that we'd really like to see, like community uplifting and owned cooperative childcare or energy or stuff like that, right? I mean, that's sort of been your focus in the last year. I guess my follow-up question is, so are you working, how do we sort of identify, is this working with Jenny, or how do we identify if there's anybody out there that sort of is in the sweet spot that we'd like to partner with, invest in, make happen?
The question that we all want to answer. No, I think we're figuring that out. And Alex, I'd be curious to know your vantage point on this. One of the great learnings that we have had as UNESCO is becoming comfortable with not knowing the answers to every question or the future plans that we are building into. I think because our task originally was like very clear cut, where it's like, okay, you take these notes, you put them here, essentially. Like we had this moment where it was like, I think a few months in a row where we were like, yeah, but what do we do? Yeah, but what do we do? Yeah, but what do we do? And then I don't quite know what clicked, but something all of a sudden just drastically shifted, and all of us were just like, oh, Ujima, you want us to co-collaborate with you. And I don't know if Nia, you had a similar experience with our group, but you know, we don't necessarily have an answer to that yet. I feel really confident that when the time is right, we'll have an answer to that question. But it is something we're talking about and figuring out, because it was even a point of clarity where we were like, is Ujima doing these, like, in creating these needs, or are we funding these needs? And then that we got clarity on that, and we were like, oh, okay, well, this completely shifts how we're thinking about it too. So the short answer is we don't know. The long answer is that.
Thank you, Kelsey. I appreciate that. And I can add to that a bit. So what I do want to say really quickly is also just want to give a shout out to Charles, who I think you know, John, Charles Wallace Thomas IV. So Charles actually designed this feasibility study process while he was working with us. And so just thought of that when Kelsey kind of talked about what the clear cut assignment was. So definitely just want to make sure I shout him out for that. And what I can say is we have an early conception, and so I appreciate Kelsey's and the team's orientation towards just being comfortable with some uncertainty, being flexible. Our early conception is that, or was, I should say, that we would put out an RFP for an operator, and this would be based on what we learned was needed from the feasibility studies. And the only reason why I said that was our early conception is just leaving room, as Kelsey pointed out, for the strategy to change. So just as We are now doing a needs assembly, which was not a part of the plan initially, based on UNESCO's work and insight. Also based on UNESCO's work and insight, that strategy could change as well. And then I'll just say really quickly, because John, when you talked about Suffolk Law School, that reminded me, there were definitely a lot of other needs that were highlighted in that exercise. And one of the reasons UNESCO suggested a needs assembly is because the team asked, well, what if needs have changed since you've last kind of put this list together? Some of the needs were pretty unrefined. So they had questions like, we see community space, we see, I think something was like art space, we see some type of other space, and there are ways in which these are the same, and there are ways in which they're different. And so it would be great to kind of have more information actually about these specific needs. And so that's where the idea of a needs assembly came from the team, to help us refine what we already have, to do a review, to see what's still relevant, what isn't, to see if there's anything that should be added, anything that should be taken away. And so again, just really appreciating, as Kelsey pointed out, that collaboration, that co-creation. I do anticipate, likewise, we'll have a similar examination. Will we put out an RFP, or will there be a different process to choose? And then just really quickly, you might have picked up, Kelsey talked about, are we funding? Are we the thing? Or are we doing the thing? And our answer is definitely we're funding it. We're financing it. That's it. We're not operators. We're not trying to run all this stuff ourselves.
So one follow-up question is, so, if we identify something, are we then sort of researching what is happening actually out there? I mean, who is trying to create in that field, sort of doing that kind of networking and research? For example, I am really interested, I believe that we need to really expand the commons, and especially around land and property. That, I want to see more and more residential properties come under land trusts. And I know City Life Vida Urbana works with the Neighborhood Land Trust. I just learned that actually the Urban Farming Institute has a land trust, which I think is one. Yeah, we need more urban gardens for sure, producing food, helping people figure out how to grow food and stuff like that. Yeah, so I mean, if you sort of identify a need, is part of it. If you're thinking about maybe drafting an RFP, well, is there anyone that you would want to apply, that you would invite to apply? Is that kind of part of how you see your mission, UNESCO? That's my last question.
So I can speak to my perspective, but maybe not on behalf of the entire group. Good thing there are some organizations on the Ujima neighborhood, what's it called? Investment plan. So you mentioned some organizations who Ujima is actually looking to invest with right now, and is inviting to join the Business Alliance. With UNESCO, some of these organizations represented aren't on it. I was looking into community-owned energy, and there's another underwriter called Sunwealth who presented. They do like solar development around the city and in New York. Could they be a financial partner with Ujima? I can't answer that, but I can say maybe we should bring it up to a vote. And we know that Ujima has nominated, people outside of Ujima have nominated business to the investment plan already. So maybe we use that same avenue.
I said this in the chat, but I can also just say it for the recording too. We are looking specifically at community land trusts, because that was part of it, and urban farming. In our write-ups, we haven't included organizations or individuals to target an invite to. I like that idea. I think the one thing that would potentially be difficult is many of us, like, we're learning along as we are also summarizing. And so I think it could prove difficult to create like an extensive network. And the other piece too is Ujima is just such a vibrant community that I think it would be easy to potentially miss folks who should be on the list. But I do like that idea, and I definitely think we'll have to just mention it at our meeting tonight.
Well, yeah, don't sell yourself short. I mean, you do the research, you're learning, and you just keep networking and learning. I mean, and absolutely rely on the staff and this body to come up with ideas. I mean, but if you're carrying it, I appreciate that. That means work I don't have to do. I can just sort of plug in later. No, but I mean, somebody's got to lead, right? I mean, so thank you guys.
Thank you. Great conversation. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, John. Really appreciate this. And I will now kick it to James. James, we don't have too much time, but let's see what we can accomplish.
Yeah, I noticed. I was like, ugh, took all my time, but I'm gonna do my best. Bear with me, y'all. So yeah, speaking on behalf of the time banking team, I am the staff representative for this team for the last couple of months, but I haven't been part of this team, obviously, for prior to that. And so, I can offer context that I'm like, oh, look at that. So I can offer, yeah, it's wild. I can offer context related to what I know and what people have told me. And whoever is part of time banking could also jump in and color things even further. But Anne, who is now here, wrote a ton of things, wins, challenges, lessons around the time banking team have had this last year. And do you want me to just tag team it? Because I don't, it's weird. You're here now. You could just speak to it.
I didn't think I would make it in time. That's amazing. Yeah, I actually don't have it in front of me, so
okay.
I'll
just jump in and we can just whatever.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, for sure. So wins. In 2020, we gained 57 new time bank members, bringing the total number of members to 383. And so I'm gonna just offer wins. And if you have some context, just jump in, and then yeah. And then I'll do challenges and lessons afterwards. At the end of 2019 and continuing in 2020, the time bank member team started using a consensus decision-making tool proposed by Don Graham. Also starting in 2019 and continuing in 2020, we formalized the role of the time bank coordinator and refined documentation of the coordinator's duties. And I believe, Anne, you were the coordinator, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And thanks to Sierra and other staff members, the Ujima Wire newsletters now feature a time bank request or offer and info about the time bank. So if people are interested, they can immediately jump into it. Great for outreach. In June 2020, we met by Zoom with Elvis Mendez, Katie Tallett, Zuma Rivera, and Neighbor to Neighbor. They're thinking of creating a time bank in Western Mass in order to sustain mutual aid efforts started in response to the public health crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic. We talked about software, how time banks work, and how to turn existing mutual aid projects into banks. And so I guess that's significant that I think currently the time bank we have is JP based. It's here. And so I think there's lessons to learn and opportunity to connect with other people doing similar work. And where are my, in the wide world, there was a lot of interest and activity around mutual aid groups and alternative economies all over the US, which is great for time banks everywhere. And I'll just say that with that, we've had interest from people in our community who've wanted to support and build this. And I want to just offer that as a win, because I do think it's offering some structure that the time bank team can have to sort of just work on something. I don't know. I feel like Kelsey and others were speaking about team like gelling or just team practice, almost like figuring out what you do. And I think in some ways, I think time banking team has sort of figured out that they're very like a project-based team in some ways. And so really thinking about like, what are those opportunities? What are the projects that we want to lean on, and who can help us do it is like sort of our lingering thing. And so pivoting to challenges, and do you have it up, or do you want me to just like keep going?
Yeah, I do have it up if you want to take a break.
Yeah, you jump into challenges.
Okay, we had fewer exchanges in 2020 than we've ever had. I mean, ever, it's only existed for 3 years, but there were only 7 exchanges in the whole year. By comparison, there were 57 the year before, and which is still already low. Like we hope to have a lot more than that in the future. So we're like hoping to build up, but then it just dropped a lot. And COVID surely is like, just like disruptions in general, and also that all the exchanges, all the offers and requests that existed in the time bank before COVID were all in-person things. So using it that way wasn't going to work anymore. So that's, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but that's definitely one of the reasons. Also, we had another challenge. We had a really small number of active team members, like 2 for most of the year, which meant what I wrote, it limited capacity for decision-making, especially using our cool decision-making tool. Our consensus decision-making tool became sort of irrelevant for part of the year. Limited our capacity for coordinating and outreach, including efforts to connect with people doing mutual aid work in Boston, which I think is still a possibility, but that did feel like a missed opportunity in that moment, because we did not have enough people on the time bank team to make those connections. We had some tech glitches, which is like, doesn't seem like a big deal, but kind of is a big deal. When it was hard to get support from Google and from Community Weaver, the software we use. And we had a tech glitch even with Gmail, which I don't know, is Christina here? Our newest time bank team member solved that last month, our Gmail problem. That was great. And then I wrote, the long-term challenge of the time bank is to foster a strong cashless economy centering working class communities of color in Boston, so that people can meet essential needs through time banking. And outreach plans that are intended to help us reach that goal, such as building relationships with organizations with time bank accounts and hosting neighborhood events, have basically been on hold since 2020. Though we have a lot of ambitions. Should I keep going with lessons?
Yeah.
You want to switch off?
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in, I guess. Lessons, we need to prioritize building up and sustaining our member team in 2021 in order to put existing outreach / communication plans into action. And yeah, just underscoring, I think, really relationship building is like huge for us, it seems. And also, again, to my point earlier around just like building a practice so people can easily jump into whatever we're doing versus it being like constantly like an introduction. Like we always had, oh, this is what time banking, this is what we're up to, like what can people easily jump into? It's like something we're trying to really, I think we figured it out, but like I think that it was a lesson for us. Because we operated with minimal human resources this year, we learned the minimal amount of work needed to keep the time bank running.
Kind of a weird lesson, but good to know.
Yeah, for sure. It's a huge lesson. A personal lesson
I can
for
read
me.
okay, go ahead.
No, you should read that. It's
Yeah.
personal.
Just because this is just something that I was thinking for myself when I was writing this. A personal lesson for me is the importance of member teams staying well connected to the whole Ujima ecosystem by being at a lot of different meetings, not just time bank meetings and events, and building relationships as the best way to ensure that the member team's work is integrated with the whole Ujima project as it evolves. That is that document.
Yeah. So there you have it. Wins, challenges, and lessons from the time banking team. Any questions, thoughts, reactions? I know we don't have much time.
And then also real quick, James and Ann, do y'all have any questions of kind of like other teams? So we can maybe just kind of do both at the same time. That was really good, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a master document of, you know, if I need a babysitter, or whatever, I mean, I'm sorry, you know, it is sort of a real mutual aid thing, but I've never seen it in terms of Ujima's, like, I can, you know, I can do your taxes, I can do da. Do we have sort of?
Are you offering to do taxes? That's a great offer.
I'm not.
Oh.
I can't. It was
I'm
an
sure whatever
example.
offers you have are
It's a
great.
wish. But
There's a website. There's a website for the time bank, which
Okay.
I never can like say the URL off the top of my head. It's terrible. Does anyone else? It's
But is it off the Ujima website? I mean,
it is linked there somewhere.
Okay.
I can
All
also
right.
just send
No,
you
I
the.
just, you know, my bad.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat and I'll add it to the notes.
Perfect. And you have to make an account also.
I have a quick question. I know you guys mentioned the increase in members, and I'm curious if over the years y'all have kind of tracked new members versus active members, because I'm totally guilty of becoming a member and then just stopping. Like, I had so many aspirations and goals, and then all of a sudden I was like, I'm really overwhelmed and don't want to coordinate with someone, and then just stopped. And I imagine I'm not the only one who unfortunately did that.
Yes, that's true. I do not know the numbers offhand, although I could easily get that number by like opening the website and doing some math, but it definitely is a small fraction, and it's a different fraction every year. It seems like the people who join, this is anecdotal, this is not actual data, but it seems like the people who just joined are the most active. I think all of the exchanges, I was looking at this like when I was writing this up, all of the exchanges from last year were with, almost all of them, all 7 of them were with new members, which is interesting. Sort of, I don't know if that's like that's like actually meaningful data, but
it actually is. I actually appreciate the question, Kelsey, and your response, Anne, because I was wondering the 50 exchanges before, because I know our time bank merged with the JP time bank, and I was wondering those 50, do we know where they were from? Were they from the JP time bank? So, okay, I was curious about that. If that
they were all
off as well.
Yeah, last year was. I hear it myself. Last year was we were at the Boston Ujima Time Bank for the whole year. It's possible that the exchanges were between members who were originally members of the JP Time Exchange, but they were all exchanges within the. I think
that happened after the merge.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Cool. Thank you. And then I'll just say really quickly, the idea that I had when you were speaking, Anne, so you talked about the importance of showing up at different meetings and different spaces in Ujima, which I appreciate, because Kelsey described Ujima as vibrant earlier, which is definitely the case. There are a lot of places. And so the thought that I had was that it actually does make me wonder if we could kind of think of ways we highlight the different member teams at different events and spaces that we have, because we don't do that right now. So the thought I had was, for example, I immediately, of course, thought about our open house, and that's something we've talked about, is it's an opportunity for the member teams to kind of present to people and enroll them. But it even does make me think about if we think of creative ways at our other events, our Black Trust and things like that, to kind of use it as an opportunity to highlight different member teams, particularly the time bank and what they're doing.
I think one idea that was floated at some point was to have buttons. They asked me about the time bank, that anyone, not just team members could wear, but like anyone who knows it, anyone who's willing to answer the question what the time bank is. Also, because time bank is kind of an interesting conversation starter. People are like, the what? That was, we didn't, I think we were thinking of it for the like very last of, I don't remember. We didn't do it, but I thought it'd be cool.
Very cool. All right, cool. Well, we are at time. So any kind of thank you so much, Anne and James. Any kind of last comments, feedback? Anne and James, did you have a question that you wanted to ask everyone else that you think could be helpful for the time bank team?
Well, I will look forward to listening to the other, assuming this meeting is recorded as usual, listening to what other, as I was writing this, I was thinking, I have no idea if this is the kind of thing that, what you mean by wins. But I'll just, so it'll be, I know that different teams have really different goals, you know, like maybe much more specific goals. In fact, that is an interesting thing to think about. Like, do other teams have very specific, like we intend to have this many people involved, or we intend to reach this fundraising or something?
Yeah,
Maybe we
I don't
should
really have
follow
anything.
that.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were done. I guess I don't really have anything to add beyond, you know, if you guys have always wanted to work with the time banking member team, this is a good time to jump in and support, looking for some like leadership to like move this work forward. And so, yeah, I'll just like, if y'all know some people who would be interested in supporting this work, that are like compelled by this effort within our work, I would encourage you guys to do some outreach to those folks. Let send them my email. I'm happy to like give some context if it's helpful. So yeah.
Cool, thank you, James. And then I do have one final question for y'all. What was the goal for exchanges in 2020, and what's the goal for exchanges in 2021?
Like the number,
Yeah,
there wasn't one, that's a great idea, that there should be
okay,
one.
I thought there was one. Okay, all right, because I just know you said 50, you wanted more, so then I thought there was some idea. Okay, all right, cool.
Just more.
All right, cool,
Yeah, and I don't
thank
think
you.
we made a goal for this year.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, Ann and James. And that ends our workshop. So I will go ahead and I will stop the recording.